As you know, we have a new Labour government in the UK, and there's many policies being announced almost on a daily basis, certainly at the time of me recording this video, which is in July 2024. So change actually creates opportunity. So anytime there's change, there's massive opportunity, and there's no better time to get involved in property development, because they are very much going after the housing market to try and disrupt it and cause a lot of change. Most of it is looking for the positive, particularly if you are on the developer side. Maybe not so much if you are on the investment side, the buy-to-lets and all that. That's probably going to be negative, but in terms of developer outcomes, it's looking very, very positive. So if you're interested in getting into ground up property development, get a copy of my book, You a Property Developer. Currently I'm offering it to you for free. All I ask is that you make a contribution to the postage and packaging. All you need to do is to head over to the website of the same name, builditandprosper.com. So what I'm going to do in this video is explore 7 areas where the government is likely to introduce a policy for housing. And the first is local plans. Now currently, under the current legislation, local plans are mandatory, and they're saying that they're going to step that up. The problem with the local plans at the moment is, yes, they are mandatory, and the vast majority of councils have produced a local plan. There are a few that have not, so it satisfies that. But the problem is that for the vast majority of them have now expired, and so they don't have a current local plan. And therefore, the local plan is really important. It tells you how that local authority is going to implement the policy, the housing policy for their particular area, how they're going to meet the needs, which then contributes to the overall strategy that the government has implemented. And so therefore, they're going to make it mandatory for local governments to have updated local plans. Now, it will be interesting to see how they actually enforce this, because bearing in mind that the current policy has failed, being mandatory, they are supposed to be up to date. So how are they going to do something different that ensures that local authorities have these local plans up to date? The second area is that they're going to have a policy on greenbelt and brownfield sites. So essentially here is that what they want to do is they want to protect the high quality greenfield sites. They're going to introduce a new category of grey sites. So what are the grey sites going to look like? Typically it's a bit unclear exactly what they mean by that, but I suspect is that where you've got a particular situation, and you've seen this, where there are a few houses here and a few houses here, and you've got a little bit of ground in there where you might be able to squeeze in 3 or 4 houses. That is not really encroaching on high quality greenfield, because you've already got housing in that area there, and it wouldn't be too difficult to infill that area, which I suspect is what they would mean by grey belt development. So in those sort of areas. Brownfield, of course, is sites that have previously had some sort of structure on them, or they've had some sort of maybe industrial activity. So that could be things like where there has been maybe a saw mill there previously, maybe some sort of like offices, maybe some joiner's workshop or something like that, where there's been already some activity, typically where you see like farm conversions of agricultural buildings. That often comes under sort of like the area of, in terms of brownfield, particularly if there's other areas there where, yes, you can do the conversion of the barn buildings, but maybe there was some other activity that then says actually you can develop that because it's brownfield. So for instance, I can think of a development near me where that we were looking at, where there was agricultural buildings, but there were also the person who owned it had a mechanics business, a garage, and they had stored some of their cars there, and so therefore that was then classified as being brownfield site. So we were able to look at getting planning on that. Third area would be affordable housing. They intend to have a very big push in racking up the amount of affordable housing. That will be dependent on the funds that they make available. Now currently the funding has been cut in those areas, so that is going to require considerable investment there in order to make that possible. So there may be the opportunity to reserve certain sites for affordable housing, and I've heard some rumors about that as well. But also, the key to that is really going to be the funding and making sure that that is then reserved for affordable housing. They're trying to probably mirror back to 1945, when the Labour government then had the largest public house building program, and very successfully delivered many millions of houses during their period in government. So I suspect that they're taking some lessons from there, and they're going to try and push that through. The fourth area will be infrastructure spending. Infrastructure spending, whether that is to allow development to happen, residential development to happen in the area, or whether it is for other larger projects such as wind farms. So the impact that that will have on housing is it will create employment in particular areas. That may be for manufacturing the components for these wind farms or other types of renewable energy. That will require housing in that area, and so therefore they will be looking to actually increase the amount of land available in those areas to meet that demand. Any time that the actual infrastructure spending goes into any particular area, it actually has the effect of raising house prices, because it increases the value of land. It's actually really the land that goes up in value as opposed to the houses. The houses will cost the same to pretty much build. Year on year, yes, there is an increase in the amount you have to spend to build a house, and until recent times that was about 3%. Of course, we've gone through quite tumultuous times over the last 3 years where prices have really gone really high. They've started to settle down. So, but generally housing, it tends to cost a little bit more each year, but it's the land value that really pushes up the values of houses. So watch out for infrastructure spending, particularly if you are a developer. Those are going to be areas that you are going to want to invest in. So the fifth area will be new towns and urban development. So new towns is a policy which has been used in the past very successfully. It does mean actually gobbling up quite a bit of green space, but it's in a controlled manner. And so therefore what you're able to do is you're able to create area from scratch. You'll be able to lay it out properly, to have plenty of green spaces and bring in amenities. And so therefore there's going to be lots of opportunities, but it very quickly allows you to then expand the number of houses being built. Of course, there needs to be a demand for those houses in that particular area. So it's not likely that the actual demand or the centres of employment are going to be immediately in those areas. Of course, they will create new centres of employment by doing that, because they will have an industrial strategy to bring industrial investment into the area. So they will, along with housing, they will then create opportunities to have manufacturing units, industrial areas, so that they can actually then have the employment centre there and also the housing to support people. This will mean that people then will move to those areas and therefore relieve in the high pressure zones where there are currently real shortages of housing. The sixth area, and this was the subject of last week's video, is help for first-time buyers. This will come in the form of two areas. One is in terms of reserving houses for first-time buyers for a period of time, and the second will be financial support in terms of specialist mortgage products. I suspect, they haven't said that, but I suspect that's going to be the case, but also help with deposits. The effect, of course, of this is it will push up house prices because it will make it easier to get into property. That will therefore increase the demand, and therefore it will push up the housing prices. But also the availability of finance is key when you are expanding the economy, and therefore housing will allow more people to get onto that housing ladder, but it unfortunately will actually mean that house prices will go up, particularly for those purchasing. So that's, if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that, then have a look at last week's video. I'll put a link up here to the video so that you can have a look at that. The seventh one is the devolution of powers. Now currently in the UK we have 4 countries that make up the UK, and this housing is a devolved power. So in fact, all these things that I'm talking about in this video really relate only to England. However, like anything, and particularly when you think in terms of the governments that are involved in the other three nations, excluding England. So in Scotland, you've got the Scottish Nationalist Party, which is likely to be replaced in 2 years' time by the Labour Party, but both are left-leaning governments. So for instance, when the additional supplemental home tax was brought in at 3% in 2015-16, the Scottish government, that didn't affect them, but they very quickly adopted that. And of course, they went much further very quickly, as I predicted, and they doubled it. So it's now 6% instead of the 3% is in England. Wales has, of course, a Labour government, and possibly that will actually move to Plaid Cymru, but again, left-leaning Plaid Cymru. So again, they're likely to adopt these policies. What will happen in Northern Ireland? Difficult to say, but I suspect with Sinn Féin, which tends to be, again, left-leaning, then it's likely that they will adopt this policy. So there is certainly within the devolved administrations a likelihood that they will adopt many of these policies. However, the devolution is also related to England. So in other words, what they are looking to do is to devolve these powers to local mayors so that they have greater control of the housing in their areas. And so you're going to see an awful lot of powers, not just housing, being devolved to these administrations, which give people in the area a much greater opportunity to be able to make decisions. Of course, one of the thinkings behind this, and this is not advertised, is it allows Labour to institute policies that can very difficult to unravel. So for instance, if we go back to Scottish Parliament, before that was introduced, policies could be changed by the UK government, but once you start devolving those powers, then you have less control over doing what they say. It's up to you to decide whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but nevertheless, that is going to be one of the consequences of this policy and many of the other policies that are going to be introduced by the government. Anyway, I hope you've found this video useful. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please subscribe now. Currently, there's only about 15% of the people who actually watch these videos subscribe, so I really would like to get that up to near the 50% mark. It seems only fair for the free content that we're delivering. So please subscribe, and don't forget, if you want a copy of my book, go to youapropertydeveloper.com. Thank you for watching. Please like and share, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.